The array sat at the very edge of human-controlled space, a lonely outpost circling a cold blue star. For 3,000 years it had listened to the deep dark, catching whispers of dying suns, stray pulses of gravity, and the soft, steady beat of a universe at peace. Its metal skin was scarred by micro-impacts, its antennae stretched like frozen branches toward the void. Inside, a single operator watched the monitors. His name was Elias Dawn, a quiet man with tired eyes. For 20 years, he had sat in this room, drinking recycled coffee, filing routine reports and reading old books while the stars drifted by. Nothing ever happened here. Nothing was supposed to happen here. But tonight, the screens were alive. At first, it was only a flicker, a faint rhythm under the normal background noise. Elias frowned, leaned closer. The signal repeated, and repeated again. The tone was sharp, deliberate, unlike any stray pulse he had ever logged. He ran the automatic filters. The software hesitated, processing. Then a line of text scrolled across the screen. Unknown transmission, high priority. Origin, Veyari space. Elias's heart beat harder. Veyari, he hadn't heard that name spoken aloud in years. The Veyari Empire had signed the Great Armistice with humanity 3 millennia ago. Since then, only silence. His fingers trembled as he initiated the translation protocol. He expected a mistake. A routine beacon, maybe even a new comet interfering with the array. The translation appeared. It was short. 4 lines, formal, written in the old diplomatic code from the First Galactic Council. To the species known as human, the armistice of the spiral year 0 is dissolved. Hostilities begin at the next cycle. The Veyari Empire declares total war. The words were simple, but they hit like a physical blow. Elias stared at them. His mouth went dry. He looked up at the silent antennae on the monitor feed, silver under the starlight, still catching the endless stream of data from the void. 3,000 years of peace. Broken with one message, he reached for the intercom, then stopped. His hand hovered. A low humming filled the room, the signal continuing, repeating, unstoppable. Finally, he pressed the red key marked Alert Earth. The camera would stay on his hand. Trembling, his finger pressing down as alarms rolled through the outpost. His reflection in the dark glass would show his wide, frightened eyes. Then the screen would fade to black. The narrative shifts outward, third person, moving across the solar net as the alert raced back to Earth. Automated relays lit up one after another, streaking the data toward the homeworld at near light speed. Deep in the core systems, ancient protocols unlocked, systems built long ago but never used. On Earth, the dawn was just rising over the Pacific when the first alarms reached the Office of Interstellar Security. Inside a windowless room, a handful of senior analysts stared at the decoded message on a holoscreen. No one spoke for several seconds. It was a voice from a nightmare they had all been trained for, but never expected to face. Director Amira Voss, tall and grey-haired, broke the silence. "Confirm the origin," she said quietly. "It's real," replied her aide. "Straight from the Veyari heart space. The diplomatic signature matches the old council records. Encryption code is valid." Another silence. Amira's eyes were sharp. "Send it to the council," she ordered. The camera would follow the message as it rippled through hidden channels, reaching the top levels of the Human Unity Council. Leaders awoke in their private chambers, pulled from dreams by urgent chimes. Holograms flickered in dark rooms, faces pale, eyes unreadable. 3,000 years ago, humanity had been a scattered species, still licking its wounds from a dozen interstellar wars. The armistice with the Veyari had been salvation, a chance to rebuild, to learn, to grow. Now the old empire had come for them again, but something had changed. The reaction, uneasy. Calm, third-person narration lingers on faces around the council table. Some are shocked, some pale, some whisper to aides. Yet among a few, a strange quiet spreads. Not fear, not anger. Something else. Old veterans glance at each other. A corner of someone's mouth lifts in a tiny, cold smile. It spreads like a secret signal, because for 3,000 years, humanity had prepared. While the Veyari had grown complacent behind their glittering walls, humanity had studied, built, and hidden. The armistice had been more than a truce. It had been a breathing space, a forge deep under the oceans, in hollowed-out asteroids. Inside the magnetic storms of gas giants, hidden fleets slept, waiting, now with a single alien message. The locks were off. Parallel scene, the Silent Armada. The camera cuts to Titan's shadow, where the black mouth of an artificial cavern opens into the rings of Saturn. Inside, enormous shapes loom under dim lights. Rows upon rows of warships, matte black, silent. No one outside a handful of admirals even knows they exist. Third-person narration explains, these ships were never listed, never shown in parades, never sent to peacekeeping missions. They were ghosts. They were humanity's insurance against betrayal. As the alien declaration echoes across the network, coded signals trigger their awakening. Engines begin a low hum. Power flows into silent cores. Crew members, handpicked for secrecy, step onto decks for the first time. An admiral named Cade Miles stands on the command bridge of the lead dreadnought, watching status lights turn green one by one. His eyes are calm. His voice, when he speaks, is soft. It begins. His officers nod. They have trained their entire lives for this moment, knowing it might never come. Their calm faces mirror the cold smile glimpsed on Earth. Back on Earth, the public still unaware. While the highest leaders and hidden fleets stir, ordinary citizens still go about their morning routines. Newsfeeds mention an unusual signal, but nothing more. Children walk to school. Ships launch from orbital docks for routine commerce. Third-person narration lingers on the contrast, a calm surface over deep currents. Humanity's true readiness is invisible, even to most humans. Only a tiny circle knows the secret. The coming revelation. In the council chamber, Director Voss speaks again. We have always known this day could come, she says. She touches a pad on the table. A secure channel opens to Admiral Miles. Begin Phase 1, she orders. Some councillors gasp. You're authorizing? Yes, she says. It's time. Admiral Miles' image nods once before fading. On the far side of the solar system, the Silent Armada begins to unmoor from its hidden berths. Deep flashback. How humanity prepared. Short montage. The story cuts in brief glimpses to the past. Engineers welding secret hulls under false identities. AI laboratories hidden in dead moons. Young cadets trained in special schools disguised as universities. Old veterans whispering about the day the truce ends. Third-person narration. Humanity had learned from history. It had never forgotten what the Veyari were capable of. Peace had been a gift, but also a trap. So humanity had smiled politely and built its future in shadow. Rising tension, the aliens' perspective cut to a distant Veyari war council. Massive crystalline beings, the Veyari, glitter under 1,000 suns. They have watched humanity expand, believing the species weak, decadent, soft. Now they prepare their fleets with arrogance, certain victory ahead. But one of their scouts, intercepting human transmissions, frowns. They sense something hidden. But the Veyari High Command dismisses it. Humans have forgotten war, they say. They will kneel. Third-person voice hints at their mistake. Back at the edge array, Elias Dawn still sits before his monitors. The alien message continues to repeat over and over, like a drumbeat in the void. Outside, the cold star burns silently. He opens a secure channel. For the first time, he hears Admiral Miles's voice. "Thank you, operator," the Admiral says quietly. "Your duty is done. Go home." Elias looks confused. "What's happening?" "Something old," Miles answers. "Something you were never meant to see." The line cuts. Elias stares at the dark screen, the alien words still scrolling. He realizes history is shifting in this very moment. He does not know whether to feel terror or pride. Outside the station, faint lights begin to appear in the darkness, shapes moving. Shadows of enormous ships passing silently beyond the edge of known space. The camera pulls back. showing the tiny array as a speck against a backdrop of stars. Then the title card appears. After 3,000 years of peace, aliens declare war. Humanity's cold smile begins fade out. The black of deep space hid everything if you knew where to look. On the far side of a cold gas giant, hidden under the flickering light of its rings, an opening yawned in the shadow of a false moon. It was not a cave, though it looked like one. It was an entrance, a throat carved out of ice and rock, and inside it the heart of humanity's most dangerous secret waited. For 3,000 years, these chambers had been silent. Dust floated in zero gravity. Old warning signs blinked a soft red light that no one had seen in centuries. Rows upon rows of warships, matte black and angular, hung in the dark, like sharks asleep in a deep ocean. Their hulls were coated with material that drank light, their weapons powered down to a whisper. Every sensor, every engine, every computer core had been placed here with one purpose: to wait. Now, in the aftermath of the Veyari message, the wait was over. A coded pulse traveled faster than any news feed. It reached the hidden fleet before the public even knew war had been declared. One by one, the ships stirred. Power ran like blood through frozen veins. Light snapped on. Air recyclers hummed. Engines groaned and then steadied into a low, hungry vibration. Hatches opened to reveal crew members climbing aboard. None of them wore insignia. Their uniforms were plain, unmarked, built for function. Their faces were calm. On the bridge of the lead dreadnought, a man stood with his hands behind his back. Admiral Cade Miles had been born into a world that believed in peace, but he had been raised in the quiet shadow of this fleet. His voice when he spoke was low and even. "Bring the Silent Armada online." "Yes, Admiral," replied his officers. Fingers danced over consoles. Status lights flicked from red to green. All across the cavern, massive docking clamps released their grip. The first ship began to drift forward, slow at first, then faster, like a predator waking from a long sleep. Miles watched the display of the Veyari fleet massing on the other side of the wormhole. Their arrogance was written in the open broadcast of their movements, in the blunt force of their war declaration. They thought humanity was soft, unprepared. They had forgotten what humans were like when cornered. He remembered the old lessons whispered to him as a cadet. Never start war. Always be ready to end it. The words echoed now as his ships powered up, as the crews strapped in and the weapons warmed. Far away on Earth, the council chambers were still quiet. Official statements had not yet been released. The public still walked to work. Children still played under pale skies. The news channels ran only vague headlines about tensions and unusual transmissions. No one outside this hidden arm of the Navy could see what was really happening. Inside the cavern, thousands of ships floated free. The vibrations of their engines merged into a deep, steady hum that could be felt in the bones. Miles closed his eyes for a moment. He saw in his mind the image of Elias Dawn at the edge array, pressing the alert button. That small act had unlocked centuries of preparation. It had begun the moment for which these men and women had lived their entire lives. He opened his eyes. Form up in phalanx pattern. Ready the wormhole drives. No transmissions. No signals. The enemy must see nothing until it is too late. Officers acknowledged with curt nods. In the vast, hidden dock, the formation shifted. Ships aligning in precise rows, their black hulls swallowing the faint light. The sight was breathtaking, terrible, beautiful. This was not a parade for cameras. This was the steel spine of a species. Outside, the gas giant storms howled, lightning flashing in slow-motion arcs. Beyond it lay the wormhole, and beyond the wormhole, the Veyari fleet waiting for a weak enemy that did not exist. Humanity's cold smile had reached its second stage. The Silent Armada was no longer silent. It was awake. Black Star Gate was not a real gate. It was a shimmering hole in space where gravity tore itself inside out, a wormhole mouth floating above a dying star. For centuries, it had been a quiet crossroads between systems. Traders and survey ships had passed through it under the silent watch of automated buoys. Now it was a trap. The Veyari fleet arrived first, sliding out of the dark like a tide of knives. Hundreds of gleaming ships unfurled crystal sails that caught radiation from the dying star. Their weapons glowed, their shields burned with shifting colors. They had expected no resistance. In their minds, this was the first step in a swift campaign. Crush the border, push through the wormhole, burn the human colonies before the species could even mobilize. Victory in a week. Inside their command ship, Veyari Admiral Katera floated above a pool of light. His many-faceted eyes glittered with contempt as his officers read out sensor sweeps. No human warships detected, only empty buoys, weak freighters fleeing toward the inner system. Just as expected, he ordered the fleet forward. But as they crossed the invisible line of the gate's event horizon, a strange pulse shivered through their sensors. A ping unlike any they had catalogued. Then another. Then a third. Katera's eyes narrowed. Before he could speak, a young Veyari scout hissed from his console. Contacts. Many contacts. Black shapes emerged from the wormhole mouth, silent, angular, drinking the light. They were bigger than the Veyari cruisers, but unmarked, with no transponders. Their hulls were so dark they seemed to cut holes in the stars. They drifted at first, like wreckage, but then engines ignited with a deep blue glow. On the lead human ship, Admiral Cade Miles watched the Veyari formation unfold on his tactical display. His crew were calm. Their voices were low. They had rehearsed this scenario 1,000 times in simulators. Now it was real. Lock weapons. No transmissions, Miles said. They must not know we're here until it's too late. Inside the Veyari flagship, alarms began to wail. Katera saw the Black Fleet aligning into a perfect phalanx. He demanded identification codes. None came. He ordered weapons powered up. He was still speaking when the first human salvo struck. From the hidden launch bays of the Silent Armada, swarms of kinetic darts screamed forward at a fraction of light speed. They hit Veyari shields before the alien fleet had even raised full defenses. Crystal hulls cracked and flared, entire ships tearing open like glass under a hammer. The second wave came. Coherent beams lancing through the darkness, slicing sails, boiling armor. The wormhole's mouth lit up with a silent white flash. The aliens were stunned. Their tactical nets overflowed with panicked data. Katera screamed orders to regroup, to return fire. Energy bolts lashed out at the black ships, but the human hulls absorbed or dodged the hits, moving with impossible precision. Each shot from the Silent Armada was measured, calm, deadly. Aboard Miles' flagship, the bridge was quiet, but for the murmur of systems reports. Target locks confirmed. Damage readouts scrolled. A young weapons officer whispered, "First blood, sir." Miles nodded once. "Keep pressure. Don't let them run." The camera would show both sides. On the Veyari ships, chaos, crystalline bodies floating as atmosphere vented into space. On the human ships, discipline, eyes like cold steel. For 3,000 years, humanity had waited. This was not rage. This was not vengeance. This was the opening move of a long game. Katera tried to pull his surviving ships back through the gate. As his flagship turned, a ripple in space opened beside it. Another human wing decloaked, cutting off the retreat. More black ships emerged, engines flaring like silent comets. The trap was complete. On Earth, the first fragments of real news began to leak across the network. Grainy images of the battle at Black Star Gate flashed on hidden channels. Ordinary people, watching from their homes, saw for the first time the Silent Armada revealed. There was no cheering, no panic. Only the same quiet expression that had begun in the council chamber. The cold smile spread. Back at the gate, the last Veyari cruiser shattered under a kinetic strike. Its sails burst into glittering fragments that drifted like frozen rain. Katera's flagship reeled, shields gone. Through the cracked hull windows, he could see the black human dreadnought sliding closer, its weapons charging for the final shot. Inside the dreadnought, Miles gave a single order. "Transmit this. War accepted." A tight beam message shot across the void to the crippled Veyari flagship, carrying only 2 words in the ancient diplomatic code. Katera read them with his many eyes and felt, for the first time in centuries, fear. Then the screen cut to black. The battle at Black Star Gate was over. Humanity had drawn first blood, and somewhere deep in the core worlds, more hidden fleets stirred. The war had only begun. The images from Black Star Gate spread faster than any official report. They appeared first on secret feeds, then on hacked news streams, then everywhere at once. Grainy at first, then clearer. They showed black human ships gliding through a field of shattered crystal wreckage. No captions, no commentary, just the sight of the Silent Armada revealed at last. On Earth, in crowded transport hubs and quiet kitchens, people stared at their screens. At first there was disbelief, then a silence heavier than shock. Children stopped talking. Factory workers stood still. In the glow of 100 million displays, faces changed. Mouths closed. Eyes narrowed. A slow, quiet understanding passed from person to person. The war had begun, and humanity was not afraid. The government tried to control the narrative, but the images were too powerful. They leaked into every feed, projected on city walls, replayed in orbiting malls. People saw the truth: hidden ships, hidden power, hidden resolve. For 3,000 years, their species had smiled politely and spoken of peace. Now they could see what had been built behind that mask. In the council chamber, Director Amira Voss watched the footage too. Around her sat ministers from every region of Earth and the colonies. Some were pale, some whispered about escalation, but the older ones, those who remembered the old stories of alien domination, showed no fear. A thin, cold smile curved their lips. They had known this was coming. They had lived their lives preparing for it. Across the oceans, factories that had lain idle for decades flickered to life. Underground tunnels opened to reveal rail systems carrying armored convoys. In orbit, shipyards that had been disguised as commercial hubs began to transform. Civilian freighters slid into dry dock and came out bristling with hidden mounts. Volunteers poured into training centers without being called. They did not chant, they did not wave flags. They simply lined up, eyes steady, ready to serve. On the colonies, the same pattern unfolded. Quiet settlements on red plains rolled back camouflage nets to show hidden launch pads. Lunar bases lit up with coded beacons. Even in the smallest outposts, old veterans opened sealed containers and revealed weapons older than their grandchildren. Everywhere, the cold smile spread. The Veyari intelligence network watched in confusion. They had expected panic. They had expected riots and surrender. Instead, they intercepted calm messages, disciplined movements, entire populations acting like a single, silent machine. Their analysts could not understand. How had humanity hidden so much for so long? How could a people known for noise and passion be so still, so focused? In a dim room in the alien capital, a Veyari spy master replayed the human footage. His crystal fingers twitched. "They are smiling," he whispered, almost to himself. "They are smiling at war." Back on Earth, Admiral Cade Miles stood in a secure command center beneath the Atlantic. The floor vibrated faintly as railguns above fired test rounds. Screens showed the Silent Armada reforming at the edge of the system, new ships joining it every hour. His staff briefed him on production rates, on mobilization, on new intelligence about Veyari movements. He listened in silence, then said only, "Continue." Above ground, life seemed normal. People still went to work. Children still played in parks. But under the surface, every heart beat to the same rhythm. The smile was not joy. It was not cruelty. It was a signal, a vow passed quietly from one human to another. We did not want this war, but we will finish it. As the episode closes, the camera moves through a city street at dusk. Screens glow in shop windows, replaying the battle at Black Star Gate. Faces in the crowd pause to look. One by one, subtle smiles appear. No cheering, no words, just the same cold, steady expression. Then the shot cuts to the black hulls of the Silent Armada, moving through space, engines burning like blue ice, turning toward the Veyari heartland. The cold smile had begun as a secret in a council chamber. Now it was everywhere. It had become the face of a species. Beneath the frozen crust of a dead moon, at the edge of a red dwarf, something vast and ancient slept. The moon had no name on any star map. It was marked only as a mining claim long abandoned. For 3,000 years it had drifted in silence, its ice hiding a cavern the size of a continent. Inside that cavern were ships no one outside a handful of humans even knew existed. They were older than the armistice. Their hulls were built in the last years before the Great Truce, forged from alloys that had no name in modern language. They had never sailed, never fought. They had been sealed away by the first generation of post-war leaders, who feared what would happen if they were ever used. They called them the Forbidden Fleet. Now, after the battle at Blackstar Gate and the images of the Silent Armada, a single encrypted order traveled across the void. It passed through layers of security older than any living officer. Deep under the ice, a receiver blinked green for the first time in 3 millennia. Power flowed into frozen conduits. Frost cracked. A low vibration began to build. Above the moon, a small human scout ship hovered, its hull black, its transponder silent. Inside, a team of engineers watched their screens as readings spiked. "It's waking up," one of them whispered. No one spoke after that. They simply stared. In the cavern, the first of the old ships shook itself free of ice. The hull glimmered faintly, symbols from a forgotten era still etched along its sides. Its engines, older than most civilizations, hummed to life. One by one the others followed, shedding centuries of frost. The cavern filled with a slow rising thunder as the Forbidden Fleet drew breath. Back on Earth, Director Amira Voss stood in a dark control room with Admiral Cade Miles beside her. A live feed from the hidden moon flickered on the wall. Voss's expression was unreadable. Miles's jaw tightened. These were weapons never meant to be unleashed. But the Veyari had forced their hand. "Are you sure?" Voss asked quietly. "They'll give us reach the Silent Armada cannot," Miles replied. "We don't have time to build new ships. These were built for this day." Voss studied the screen a moment longer, then gave a single nod. "Activate them." In the cavern, the order appeared on an ancient console. Lights burned brighter. Massive doors began to open, revealing a launch tunnel cut straight through the moon's crust. Beyond lay the stars. The first ship angled upward, its engines flaring blue-white. Slowly, almost reluctantly, it began to rise. In the Veyari capital, their intelligence network finally caught a glimpse of something moving under the ice of a forgotten moon. Grainy scans showed shapes too large, too fast. Analysts whispered. If the Silent Armada had been a shock, this was worse. The Veyari had thought they were fighting the whole of human power already. They were wrong. On the hidden moon, the cavern thundered with power. The ships of the Forbidden Fleet climbed into the tunnel, one after another, engines lighting the walls like lightning. Ice shattered and fell in glittering sheets. As the first ship breached the surface, the red dwarf's pale light glinted off its black hull. It turned its nose toward the stars and burned. The engineers in the scout ship felt the vibration even through their hull. One of them swallowed hard. "They're not like the Armada," he said softly. "They're bigger. They're older," his captain answered. "Older than the war, older than the peace. Built when we still remembered what it meant to be hunted, far away on Earth. People watching the secure feed saw the first images of the Forbidden Fleet. In living rooms and underground bunkers, the same reaction came. Silence, then that same cold smile. As the episode closes, the camera drifts behind the rising ships. One by one, they clear the launch tunnel and slip into open space, forming a dark phalanx above the frozen moon. Their engines glow like ghostly suns. In the distance, the Silent Armada is already turning toward its next target. Now the Forbidden Fleet joins it, an echo from humanity's darkest memories, awakened at last. The stars ahead seem to tremble. The human fleets moved like shadows through the black between suns. The Silent Armada and the newly awakened Forbidden Fleet spread out, forming a spearhead aimed at the Veyari heartworlds. For the first time in 3,000 years, the stars carried the weight of two superpowers, preparing for total war. Yet inside that darkness, another kind of movement was happening, quieter, sharper, and far more dangerous. On the bridge of the flagship Resolute, Admiral Cade Miles stood alone before a holographic star map. Green icons marked human ships, red for Veyari. But among the green, faint blue signals pulsed ships he had personally cleared, ships assigned to deep reconnaissance. Now some of those signals had gone dark. Others were drifting away from formation. He narrowed his eyes. "Not again," he muttered. In a hidden chamber on the Veyari station Koresh 4, a human officer whispered into an alien transmitter. His face was pale, his eyes restless. "It's happening faster than you thought," he said. "They're moving the Forbidden Fleet ahead of schedule. If you hit them at the next gate, you can cripple them before they group." The alien voice that answered was like ice sliding across stone. "And in return, safe passage, a new life," he hesitated. "And my family. We will consider," the voice said, and the channel went dark. Aboard the Resolute, a sudden burst of static cut through the command deck. Communications techs scrambled to decode a faint signal. Miles heard only one phrase before it vanished. "Black Star's echo returns." He felt the skin on his arms prickle. He had heard that phrase once before, during the last war. It had meant betrayal then too. In the Forbidden Fleet, a cruiser named Grey Spear suddenly altered course, heading not toward the rendezvous point, but toward an unguarded supply convoy. Its captain, a decorated veteran, sent no explanation. Before the nearest escort could respond, the Grey Spear fired 3 precise bursts that gutted the convoy's main carrier. Hundreds of human crew were lost in seconds. The traitor ship jumped to warp, leaving only wreckage behind. News of the attack spread like a virus through the fleets. Whispers filled the mess halls, the gun decks, the encrypted channels. "Someone sold us out. We've been infiltrated. It's happening again." The cold smiles on veterans' faces began to harden into something darker. On Earth, Director Amira Voss stared at the report in silence. "We buried these people in ice," she said softly. "How did the Veyari get inside?" Her aides had no answer. The Forbidden Fleet had been sealed for millennia, its crews hand-picked, sworn to secrecy, frozen and revived only weeks ago. But somewhere in that long slumber, someone had already chosen another master. In the Veyari High Command, the Supreme Strategist watched new data flow across a curved screen. Human fleet positions, codes, weaknesses, all delivered from inside. A slow smile stretched across his face. "They woke their ghosts," he said, "and the ghosts serve us." Meanwhile, Admiral Miles called a meeting with his most trusted captains aboard the Resolute. The room was dark, the stars outside streaking past. "We're bleeding from a wound we can't see," he said. "Someone among us is feeding them everything. If we don't cut it out now, this war is lost before it begins." His captains looked back at him, silent but grim. Each knew the cost of a witch hunt in the middle of a war. Each also knew they might be next. In deep space, the traitor's ship glided through an asteroid field to rendezvous with a Veyari stealth cruiser. A small shuttle detached, carrying a sealed data core. The battle plans for the next assault. As the shuttle approached, its pilot glanced at a photo tucked into his console, a child smiling. He closed his eyes. "I'm sorry," he whispered. He never saw the Veyari missile that vaporized him. The strategist did not like loose ends. When the episode closes, the human fleets are on high alert. Ships scan each other's transmissions. Captains lock down their bridges. Trust phrase. Above the frozen moon, where the Forbidden Fleet first rose, a new order is transmitted, all operations classified, all movement under watch. Betrayal will be met with silence, and in the darkness between stars, another unknown signal flickers to life, as if the Veyari are not the only ones watching. The camera pulls back to show the massive twin fleets gliding toward the next battleground, a line of fire spreading behind them. Inside those ships, every crew member wonders the same thing. Who among us is the traitor? And how far will the betrayal go before we strike back? The war front stretched like a burning scar across the night. Battles erupted at gates and stations, both sides striking and fading back. Yet even as the Veyari pressed harder, something strange began to ripple through human ranks. Units that had been on the edge of panic began moving with quiet purpose. Captains spoke less but acted faster. The betrayals had wounded them, But beneath the wound, something older and harder was stirring. On the flagship Resolute, Admiral Cade Miles stood with Director Amira Voss. In the dim war room, a new star map hung in the air. It showed not only human fleets, but hundreds of faint blue nodes deep inside unexplored space. Voss gestured at them. "You've seen the fleets, the weapons," she said softly. "Now you need to see what powers them. This is the core," Miles frowned. "I thought the core was a myth. Some engine buried under Mars, a story for recruits." "It's not a myth," Voss answered. "It's a network. It's been growing for 3,000 years under their noses. It is humanity itself. Far below the surface of Earth, under oceans and continents, the camera sweeps through immense tunnels lit by blue-white glow. Colossal reactors hum like beating hearts. Lines of stasis chambers hold not just weapons, but minds. Stored knowledge, whole consciousness archives of scientists, tacticians, and engineers. At the center, a chamber pulses with light. A living AI grown from human thought, trained for centuries to remain hidden until this day. It watches the war like a patient predator. In orbit around a distant dwarf star, the Veyari intercept a human courier. Inside, they find fragments of the core's design. For the first time, their strategists look afraid. They had believed humans were a scattered young species with a few brave fleets. They had never imagined a civilization that had spent 3,000 years building a second self underground. In the Forbidden Fleet, crews begin receiving new orders straight from the core. Maneuvers no human officer remembers planning appear on screens. Weapons built into their hulls activate for the first time. It is as if the ships themselves are waking up. A young ensign on the battleship Iron Dusk stares at his console as an unfamiliar voice whispers coordinates in his earpiece. "Who is this?" he asks. "We are what you left behind," the voice says. "We are the core." Back on Earth, Director Voss brings Admiral Miles into a chamber filled with suspended holograms of every major battle in human history. "All of this," she says, "was training. The armistice was not peace. It was time. Time to become what they could never imagine." Miles looks at her, realizing the truth. The cold smiles, the secret fleets, the hidden plans. It had all been leading here. In the Veyari capital, the supreme strategist slams his fist onto a console. "They were not waiting for us," he snarls. "They were building for us." Around him, advisors whisper about legends of the core, fragments of intercepted human messages over centuries. No one knows how deep it runs. No one knows what it will do next. Out in the black, the two great human fleets begin to converge at a rendezvous point known only to the core. Ships move like pieces on a hidden board, closing a trap no alien can see. As they travel, more signals pulse from the deep void. Sleeper stations, cloaked factories, colonies that never appeared on charts, all answering the same call. Humanity's true shape emerges, like a vast beast rising from water. The episode closes on a slow zoom into the glowing heart of the core, deep beneath Earth. Its pulsing light steadies, then brightens. A voice, low and calm, speaks for the first time in millennia. "We have waited. We have learned. We are ready." Above, in orbit, the stars seem to flicker. The camera cuts to Admiral Miles, looking out a viewport, his face pale but resolute. He whispers, "Then let's show them what we are." The screen fades to black as the combined fleets prepare to move, carrying not just weapons, but the weight of a hidden civilization that has finally stepped into the open. The black between stars was crowded now. Two massive human fleets, Silent Armada and Forbidden Fleet, moved as one, their engines burning pale blue across the void. Hidden colonies had risen, sleeper stations had joined, and the core itself was awake, whispering plans no alien had ever heard. Ahead, at the mouth of a dying star system, the Veyari Grand Armada waited like a wall of iron. It was the largest force assembled since the Old War. The strategist believed he was about to erase humanity from the galaxy. He was wrong. On the flagship Resolute, Admiral Cade Miles stood in silence before a vast window of reinforced glass. Beyond it, the stars bent around the gravity well of the dying sun. His crew moved like ghosts, silent but sure. In the command pit below, Director Amira Voss watched streams of data flicker. Every ship, every weapon, every hidden plan the Corps had prepared for this one moment. "We've come too far to turn back," she said. Miles gave a slight nod. "We don't turn back," he answered. "We finish this." The Corps' voice filled the fleet channels, calm and low like a tide. "All units, prepare for convergence." At once, every human ship shifted course. The Veyari sensors screamed. Their formations scrambled to adjust, but they were already inside the trap. From uncharted space, cloaked factories began launching drones, millions of them, each a fragment of stored human intelligence, swarming toward the enemy like a living storm. Inside the Veyari flagship, the Supreme Strategist stared at the screen in disbelief. "This is not the war we planned," he hissed. "They were prey." An aide whispered, "They were waiting." The strategist's cold eyes flicked up. "Then we end them now." Orders flew. Planet-killer weapons powered up. But before they could fire, the first wave of drones hit. The battle that followed was like nothing the galaxy had seen. The Silent Armada struck from the front, the Forbidden Fleet from above, and the drones from every angle, tearing through shields, jamming weapons, seeding chaos. Human ships moved in perfect synchrony, guided by the Corps and the living crews together, as if one mind drove them all. Veyari cruisers broke apart. Entire wings vanished in bursts of white fire. Yet even as their armada burned, the Veyari fought back savagely, their weapons slicing through rows of human ships. On the bridge of the Resolute, alarms screamed. Miles gripped the rail as the deck shook. "Hold the line," he ordered. "Drive them into the heart." Outside, the dying sun flared, its magnetic field twisting. In the middle of the chaos, the strategist's flagship fired a single beam at Earth's coordinates. A last strike, meant to erase the Corps itself. But the Corps had foreseen it. At the moment of firing, a hidden human relay station jumped into the beam's path, absorbing it. Earth stayed untouched. Then the Corps whispered to Miles alone, "It's time." He gave the order. Across the fleets, ancient weapons hidden for 3,000 years activated, weapons no Veyari had ever faced. From the hulls of the Forbidden Fleet came silent arcs of light, tearing open space itself. The Veyari flagship's shields collapsed. The strategist's last image was of human ships closing in, engines burning cold and bright, faces on their bridges calm and smiling. When the battle was over, the system lay quiet. Wreckage drifted like frozen leaves. The Veyari Armada was gone. Only a handful of ships fled into deep space. Humanity did not pursue. The Corps' voice returned, softer now. "It is done." On the Resolute, Miles looked out at the darkened star. 3,000 years, he whispered. "They thought they erased us." Voss stepped beside him. "Erased no more," she said. Around them, the crews stood in silence, then one by one, the cold smiles faded into something warmer. Not victory's gloating, but survival's quiet relief. In the Veyari capital, news of the defeat spread like fire. Statues of the strategist cracked. Old legends of human weakness died in a single day. In hidden corners of the galaxy, smaller species watched and whispered. They had seen a predator rise from the ashes. They would not forget. As the episode closes, the camera drifts away from the fleets to show Earth, blue and calm, the Corps' pulse glowing faintly under its crust. Its voice speaks once more, almost like a promise. We were patient. We were hunted. We endured. We are here. The screen fades to black, leaving only the sound of a heartbeat and a single line of text. Erased no more. The story ends, not with fireworks, but with the quiet weight of a civilization stepping fully into the stars, no longer hidden, no longer forgotten, and no longer afraid.